welcome back to Analyzing the Magnus Protocol. Today, I am going to be covering Magnus Protocol episode 42, Sink, Swim. I really like the statement on this one, which is actually written by John Ware, guest writer, who apparently wrote the Slit verses and the I Am in Askew, with the former being an award-winning, horror weird fiction podcast thing. I'll leave a couple links to the things in the description if you want to check those out. Very, very unique. I don't know why. I don't think I can place why, but I really like this case. But we'll get into that. Of course, editing and other writing by John Sims and Alexander J. Newell. I guess not much else to say. If you want to stick around, just subscribe, I guess, for future videos. I have a little theory video in the works due to this episode, but we'll talk about that later. So let's just get right into it. So we begin in Alice's phone, with her and Heinrich outside of a tattoo parlor called the Old Wolf, but that's the English translation. This is what it is in German. I don't know how to pronounce that. Alice teases Heinrich about him essentially wanting to get a tattoo of we're at a tattoo parlor. You went, And then Heinrich is just like, no, I crafted this skin too well that I don't want to tarnish it. And this begins Alice saying wait, okay, so does that mean, wait, never mind, I actually don't want to know. Alice asks Heinrich okay, why are we at a tattoo parlor and how is this connected to Freddy, the programmer, KS, blah, 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 blah. And Heinrich pauses for a moment and he gets a little irritated when Alice then asks him, hey, what's up? He essentially explains that, you, Alice, you're not Colin. And she's like, yeah. Heinrich just goes on to explain then that he's still kind of irritated that Colin labeled him as a safe external. So what Heinrich's plan was to bring him here, take him down that alley over there, and not kill him, but to quote, make him regret the word safe, whatever that means. Heinrich then says that he actually wishes Colin was there and he wishes he wasn't dead. And Alice agrees with him, which is really sweet. I really like Heinrich. He's so cool. But then, Alice points out, look at all these flashes in the window of the parlor. And Heinrich is just like, how you use this word flashes? And Alice is basically just like, oh, it's, little, displays of various tattoos, designs, and whatnot. Some of them, she notes, are alchemical symbols for mercury, copper, and sulfur. She then says that, she wasn't much of an expert at that, unlike Celia and Sam, and she pauses on Sam's name for a moment. But she says that these sorts of symbols were all over in Colin's journal, so she kind of recognizes them at this point. Fair enough. She then asks Heinrich how long this building has been there, and he basically says probably have been here ever since the walls fell. If they're in Berlin walls, yada yada yada. But then again, I'm just thinking about this right now. If they I don't want to say retconned, but if they're using sometimes real historic events to explain Stark Wall, externals, that sort of stuff, how it is heavily hinted, or I believe theorized, that the Great Burning of London, and I want to say the 1700s, I fact check that, was actually something due to the protocol caused by old-timey Stark Wall. But Heinrich continues explaining that this KS programmer likely could have been here if he was interested at all in tattoos or alchemy. And Alice says that they could probably talk to the owners, and Heinrich responds with,
I am assuming you mean that I will speak to the owners, since you cannot actually speak German.
I'm getting better.
No, you are not.
We cut out of Alice's phone and then back into Alice's phone towards the end of the conversation between an elderly tattoo artist and Heinrich. That elderly tattoo artist is voiced by Niles Schiffman. I think that's how you say that. And it's in German, but I translated it. So the tattoo artist is just after that. I don't know. Heinrich, are you sure? Tattoo artist. Yes, yes, yes. Is that all? And then Heinrich's like, yes, thank you. And then tattoo artist says that, which in English just translates to please. So it's probably just a weird context thing that, dumb American mind doesn't understand. But we get the gist of this little conversation. After that, though, Heinrich then goes back to Alice and says that the programmer's name is KLAUS Schweitzer. So we all were correct, I was correct, that the KS is Klaus. And I guess now that I'm thinking about it, it could be a different Klaus, but why would it be a different Klaus? Then again, there's a lot of cases about transforming one body to another, or making a new copy, and then killing the old one. So who knows? There could be two Klauses. I doubt that, but I could see a possibility being there for some reason. And Heinrich goes on saying that he essentially owned the place for 40 years, and the people there are very proud of his memory. He was a regular in the 80s, and he collected photographs of rare tattoos, especially of a man whose name is Oscar Jarrett. That, I'm gonna have to rethink and reread, probably go back through a couple episodes, but if I believe correctly in this moment, Oscar Jarrett was a famous artist, something or another that did weird stuff that eventually Inksoul was influenced by to create their sort of tattoos that do weird alchemy stuff, weird paint stuff to people. If I'm remembering all that correctly. Regardless, he had rented an upstairs room for a few months, and he had a bunch of computer equipment, and Alice gets really excited about that, and then Heinrich just says, no, it was taken along with him. And Alice is like, the hell do you mean by that? Heinrich says, KLAUS Schweitzer and all of his computer equipment were taken by the Stasi, which I had to look up what that was. It's essentially like the German CIA, FBI, basically. Which, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, if this is the same KLAUS, which assuming it is, KLAUS was taken with all of his computer equipment in the past, or in, some time ago. Lena was contacted by some higher up people at the OAAR, British government, something like that, to kill him, but Lena didn't. It's probably a theory thing I'll probably think about, make maybe a short about. I don't feel like that's like a whole video worth, maybe. Probably a short. But no, that's actually very interesting. Because who would have wanted Lena to kill KLAUS? And since they didn't, but Gwen threatened that to the higher-ups. Oh no, could have been Trevor? He's the Prime Minister of Europe in the protocol world. So, who knows? This is when we cut to Celia in the OIR on her computer. We get this just one-sided conversation with her and Alice, basically being like, okay, who the heck is Oscar Jarrett? Okay, I guess it's better than nothing. And then we tell that it's a very bad signal. Celia is repeating lots of herself. We hear kind of muffled Alice cutting in and out, and eventually the phone just hangs up, and Norris checks in. Essentially a transcript from the Services of the Service of Information and Traces Technology, SITT, from 27/02/2010. That would be February 27th. Okay, yeah, sorry, I don't do dates that way. Although that is, bit of a tangent. It should go date, month, and then year. Not month, day, and then year. America's just weird, man. Anyways, it's essentially a transcript of a reporter by the name, what was his name? Prim Roswell, interviewing Monique Bakoyo in her Paris apartment. She's like this big singer opera person, that's what I kind of understand from it, who retired in 1998. So this is 12 odd years later. Essentially, Monique recounts a 1998 sailing incident with a lover, Pietro, on the Adriatic Sea. Their yacht essentially capsized in a storm, and trapped under the flooded cabin, she had like a near-death experience in which she encountered this supernatural entity. She described it as like fleshy white shapes in the water, with long cold hands that like reached for her. But despite that, she just started singing. Not like opera singing, but like lullabies, to like soothe the horrors around her, which was her thought. Crazy, but sure, I guess. Her singing eventually kept these entities at bay, and she survived. Although she suspected that something worse was listening to her. Later at La Scala, which is some audition performance thing, I believe, she auditioned privately to prove her voice was still intact to like government people, because she was like stuck for like, I think it was hours or days. I don't know why I can't remember that, but she was stuck under like the boat for hours, and I think it was like days. So people like were like, can she still sing? Can we still make money off of her? So like the big corpo people were like, hey, sing. We want to make money still. So this was essentially that. When she started singing though, all the people essentially just started choking on brine water. And later when, they were like recovered, it just seemed like they all had strokes at the exact same time, and that there were just seawater. But not just that, their bodies had distorted, and gray hands emerged from their mouths to applaud her. So creepy. Although, here's the thing, Monique doesn't see this as a tragedy, but she says that she found a new audience to play for. An audience that like truly appreciates her craft now. Then she basically starts to like threaten the reporter Prim and like, hey, you could listen to the tune, you could be free, blah 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 blah. And the recording kind of just cuts out, and that's that. And then as soon as it ends, Celia's like, Christ, I hate the wet ones. And I'll bring this up after, but so Celia then like is hurrying out, assumably I think to meet up with Lena, wherever that's happening. Gwen's like, hey, I'm busy, don't bother me, blah blah blah, and Celia's just, it's Alice. And Gwen, stops, is like, and she's like, sounds like making progress, but she's not gonna figure out anything until tomorrow. And Gwen's like, cool. She's like, I'm not gonna be in tomorrow, I have like a meeting thing, just like email me, or like a report, and I'll read it while there. And Celia's just like, a fucking report? What? And Gwen is like, yes, thank you. 1 page should be fine. And Gwen is like, I trust you, you can be good on your own tomorrow, right? And Celia is like, yeah. Gwen then just leaves, and we just hear Celia take in a deep breath, and that's this episode. We don't learn a lot, but we learn a few things. Firstly, I don't know if this is still, like, it's still my theory that I'm thinking of a thing in alchemy is, the classical 4 elements, air, earth, water, fire. This is another wet one, another water thing, like in the first season, where the people were like digging up is like, I want to go back to shore, fuck you, like worker lady. And then the beginning of this season, I want to say like 33, 32, one of those, where the woman was like essentially possessed by the land, and then she was just recounting of like the land died because industrialism and fuck you society. And then I don't think we've gotten anything on air that could relate to air, but then the one fire thing that I think, which is a little bit of stretch because these have been cases thus far, but again, back to like the great burning of London in 16 whatever the fuck, caused by Starkwall, fire, the burning of the Magnus Institute Manchester, assumably again by the protocol in Starkwall, fire. Again, this is just another water thing that like I instantly clicked on when it was like, I'm singing to the eldritch depths below. And then what was the other thing? Again, KLAUS. I want to make a little theory about that. KLAUS, the programmer of Freddy, why? And why was Lena ordered to kill him? Why did Lena not kill him? Mysteries. But I guess next week we're gonna figure out what's up with Sam and our Magnus trio. So, I guess without all further out of the done, if you enjoyed this, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next week. All right, cheers, bye.